And we're back. So we are going to be discussing the shape tools in Adobe Illustrator. And it's very simple. There's nothing complicated about it. Shape tools are exactly what they sound like. They are shape tools. You just create a shape using a tool option that's in your toolbox. And that's about it. Now, there are different ways to go about achieving these shapes, and you can achieve multiple different types of shape by combining shapes. There are options, and those options can be complicated, but the actual tool itself is relatively easy to use. So let's get started. We are going to, let's just make sure we have a fill with no stroke. You can leave the stroke on, but we're just going to do this for the sake of argument, just to make things clear. We're going to do it without a stroke. And we are going to change this to red. I tend to work in CMYK. It's just, for me, it's easier. I don't know about anybody else, but that's just how I work. And I like to do a lot of things for print. So having my mentality set in CMYK just helps. But that's neither here nor there. If you look in your tools panel, again, your tools panel is usually going to be located on the left-hand side of your window. I do this for my own spacing. But if you look, it will be your 8th icon down from left to right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And it will say rectangle tool. But essentially, it's your shape tool. If you click and hold, you'll notice there are a bunch of tool options that are listed here. Okay? And we're going to go over each one. So first, we're going to start with the rectangle tool. And the shortcut for that is M on your keyboard, which is, typical. Each tool typically has a shortcut option. Under the shape tools panel, you'll only notice that there are about two, which is the ellipse tool and the rectangle tool. So once you get your rectangle selected in your tools panel, you're going to then click anywhere in your artboard and you're going to drag out the shape that you want. Okay? And once you let go, you will have the shape of your rectangle in the color that you've chosen. Okay? And you can do that for any shape. Now that's a rectangle, so we're going to set that to the side. You're just going to take a look at how all of these shapes appear. Now a rounded rectangle is essentially this with the corners chamfered off. So basically it's going to have a round edge. We're going to click this, and if you notice, the edges, instead of having one anchor point, let's zoom in a little so we can see, it has two. Let's compare. You notice this has, let's see, one anchor point right here, and this has two anchor points. It's because it's rounding out. Now, that is how you would set up a basic rounded rectangle. Now there are ways to change that rounded edge. I'm actually going to cover that in the next section. So after you finish reviewing this, be sure to check out the advanced version of the shape tutorial so that you can understand how to change some of these things. Then you have your ellipse tool. An ellipse essentially is an oval or anything with full rounded edges, 360 degrees in shape, just like a circle. But you can flex and manipulate how you want it to come out, just like you would with the rectangle or the rounded rectangle. And then the other option we have is Polygon. And a polygon, as you know, just has multiple sides. There's no definition to the number of sides. But we do know that we can change these number of sides in here. Again, that's going to be covered the same way it's going to be covered for the rounded rectangle on how to change those numbers in the next section. If you were to click and hold down, you can go to the star tool. You can click that. You can get a star. And this, again, sides can change, just like the polygon tool, just like the radius on the rounded rectangle. All going to be covered in the next section. And then we have this freak of nature tool, which to this day I have not found a good use for it. But essentially, it's just like the lens flare tool in Photoshop, which I think is a horrible tool, typically, unless you expertly know how to use it, which most people don't, so it tends to look extremely bad when used on objects. But you click this, and you'll notice there's like a flare effect that comes and grows as you start to pull and push your cursor in and out. Once you let go, you will have a lens flare. All right, and that is essentially how you create these tools or these shapes using the tools panel and the shape tool. Now, there are more options. Again, we're going to cover those in depth, but this is how you create your shapes in Adobe Illustrator. And these are our basic shapes. So when you have a chance, fool around with this, get familiar with just creating basic shapes. And then in our next section, we're going to go more in depth on creating shapes, combining shapes, subtracting shapes, and actually altering our initial shapes. All right, so stay tuned, check out our next section, and we'll advance on these different properties. All right.